Hey guys, it's Ted with HDpiano. Here's how to play Fading Like a Flower. 2, 3, 4. And that takes us into the verse. So we're just going to learn the introduction in this first lesson section. It actually has the same chords as the chorus, but in the chorus we're going to be playing something pretty different on the piano. So I'm going to leave that to another lesson section. And we're going to go through the whole song. If you go through all the lesson sections, including the verse, chorus, bridge, and guitar solo, and we have a fun key change on the last chorus in this song. So I think it's going to be a fun song to learn. It's this great, rock ballad from 1991, and it really features the piano, especially in this introduction. I think this introduction is the hardest part of the song. So if you can learn this introduction I'm about to teach you, you can probably handle the rest of the song. So before we get into all the details of this piano part, let's just look at the basic chord progression. This is one where it's going to help to learn the chord progression first, because the chords are really quite simple. It's only all of this arpeggiation and playing around with them that's going to make it a little tricky. So we're in the key of F major, and we're only going to be using the 4 chords of pop here. And if you're a regular HDpiano student, you might be familiar with those. If we number the chords in a given key by their scale degree, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, in this case, in the key of F major, our 4 chords of pop are going to be the 1 chord, the 4 chord, 5 chord, and 6 chord, which is a minor chord. So those are the only chords we're working with here. F major, B flat major, C major, and D minor. And as I teach this to you, just because I always like to reinforce this idea of thinking in numbers for our students, I'm actually going to refer to them as their numbers here. So we start with a chord progression that goes 1, 4, 6 minor, 5. Okay, so remember that. That's the first chord progression. And then we have kind of an answering phrase, which is a little bit different. It goes 1, 4, 5, and back to 1. And I'm playing every chord in root position just for demonstration purposes. All right, so going on from there, we're going to basically repeat the first chord progression, but we're going to end on the 4 chord. It goes like this. So 1, 4, 6 minor, 5, and then we're going to land on this B flat chord, this 4 chord, and hold it out for 2 measures before we go to the verse. And as I mentioned, this is the same chord progression we see in the choruses of this song. So now that you know those chords, let's talk about what's actually happening in this piano part. Let's look at the left hand to start with. And the left hand is following this pattern where I'm mostly just going to be playing root, 5th, root. So that's the bottom note in the chord, the top note in this 3-note chord, which we call the 5th of the chord, and then that bottom note again repeated up an octave. So that shape is the main shape we'll see in the left hand. So to start with, on the F chord, it looks like this. And then we go to the B flat chord, looks like this. Now we have a slight difference here on the D minor and C chords. We're kind of running out of room once we add in the right hand if we were to do that entire shape. So for the D minor and C chord, we're just going to arpeggiate the root position chord. So for D minor, it's D, F, A, F, and on C, C, E, G, E. So that first left-hand part sounds like this. Spend some time with that, get it under your fingers. The next thing is very similar, but just remember we have a different chord progression. It's F, B flat, and then we go to C, which is the 5 chord, and back to 1. So that's that second phrase there in the left hand. And it's all the same shapes on each of those chords. These big root, fifth root shapes on the F and B flat chords. And then when you get to the C chord, you're going to play root position just so that the right hand isn't in the way. The first 4 measures of the left hand go like this. Oh, you know what? I missed a detail. The second time, at the start of that second phrase, the F chord is supposed to go like this. So, and I actually think in my playthrough at the top of this lesson, I did this. The same F shape as before, but I was the one who transcribed this from the recording, and I remember hearing that in the recording. So if you're one of our students who wants to be totally exact to the recording, well, it paid off that you listened to this far into the lesson, because I'll make sure to do this on the whole song performance. We actually have an upward arpeggio of this F chord on the third measure here, the second phrase. So this is a little bit of a reveal of the behind the scenes. If you didn't already know this about HDpiano videos, when we play for the lessons, we're always reading from sheet music, which is always kind of interesting, because we like to emphasize learning for our students without needing to use sheet music. And most of us do play by ear, especially on gigs and things like that. So we're used to learning songs in that way, but just for the specific workflow of our video production, we're always reading sheet music because we want to be exact. So it's good for cases exactly like this. Anyway, that was a question that a student of ours asked recently on a webinar about whether or not we are reading sheet music. So anyway, so second time through, you have that ascending arpeggio on the F chord instead of root, fifth, root. Let's move on from there. So after the first 4 measures, I'll show you what happens next. There's that part I was just mentioning. And then we go back to root, fifth, root. And then everything goes down an octave. So in this moment, because we've jumped down to this lower register with our left hand, we don't have to do these root position chords to stay out of the way of our right hand when we get to the D minor and the C chord. So now we're just going to be going root, fifth, root on everything. And then when we get to the B flat chord, we want this to be really powerful. So we're going to play this whole shape, root, fifth, root. We call this a power chord because it's very similar to a certain guitar chord that gets used a lot in this style of music, called a power chord. So we're going to play that power chord shape in our left hand, just an eighth note early, right? It's before the end of the 4-note pattern we've been playing in our left hand. We're going to jump in on this B flat chord. So starting from the lower octave, left hand sounds like this. And I think it works great if you make that first B flat chord short like that, and then land on the big one. All right, so now with the right hand, I'm not gonna verbalize so much about the details. I'm just gonna give you a really slow walkthrough. With the right hand, you might get a lot out of noticing the places where the shapes the right hand is playing are just coming from those 4 basic chords I showed you. So like in this case, for example, that comes from an F major chord. This comes from the upper 2 notes of a B flat major chord. Here's a straight up D minor chord, etc. So notice those places in this right hand part that we generally, whenever we're playing chords in the right hand, it's just coming from wherever we are in the chord progression. But beyond that, we do have a lot of sort of melody notes and just details you're going to want to pick up in the right hand. So hopefully this slow playthrough helps with that. Here we go. 4 and. And so there is the right hand together with the left hand. One spot I'd especially like to point out is this cool moment at the end of the first 4 measures. We get this melody that sounds like bum, right? And that's really created between the 2 hands. Left, and then right hand comes in and picks it up on the E. So I really like that moment because it's almost like we have 3 different parts for just a second. We have the right hand up on this chord here, the left hand here, and it's jumping down to here. And then this little inner part, or that gets created between the 2 hands, etc. So I would suggest, as always, you're going to want to start slowly and in sections. And it might be a good idea to treat this hands separately to start with. This isn't one where the coordination of rhythms between the 2 hands is going to be so tricky that you just want to tackle that problem from the get-go. I think you could get a lot of benefit out of learning each of the hands separately and then slowly trying to put them together. I don't think it's going to mess up your progress too much to learn the hands individually. I think it would actually really help. So you might try learning it that way. Get the right hand together, the left hand together, and then starting from really slow tempo and slow chunks, put the hands back together again and get this introduction. And as I said, if you can get this introduction of this song, I think the rest of the song is not going to be too hard for you. This is definitely the hardest section of our lesson. Okay, great job on part 1. If you're on HDpiano.com already, you can click on the next video. If you're not, head on over so you can keep going with this song. If there's another song you want to learn, send us your ideas at requests.hdpiano.com. You can follow us on social media for a heads up about new lessons. And if you're on YouTube, drop us a comment because we love hearing from you. I'm Ted with HDpiano.com. Until next time.